This is New England Soccer Weekly with Tom Quinlan, Nick Giuliano, and Mike DeSilva on 790 The Score.
Oh, yeah!
What's up, boys and girls? Welcome on into New England Soccer Weekly. How are you?
Doing good. Ears hurt a little bit after that. Chant. I don't know what would you even call that.
Favorite moment of the weekend, by the way? You want to know what it was?
What was it? The fact that you went viral?
No, I was going to say Lucas Zelleraian helping me hit my parlay.
Not only that was the biggest moment for Tom, and I think the entire stadium of Gillette Stadium heard that happen.
Yeah.
It was the most exciting moment. I was actually in my car. I was screaming very loudly in my car.
Was that the half-field goal?
That was the half-field goal.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm sitting in.
That's kind of an absurd way to hit a parlay.
I mean, Tom, listen, you were next level in the press box last Saturday
because Seattle.
You were walking around.
Screwed me.
Yes, but you were walking around the press box where we're working. We're supposed to be members of the media saying, "We got this tonight, boys. Let's get some money. Let's get some money."
Hey, let's make some. It's legal. It's not like I'm doing anything illegal. I'm paying my taxes.
That's a valid point. I mean, that is a very valid point. Sports betting is legal. It is funny to think about how far the world has come in the last 2 years. Massachusetts, in less than a year.
Yeah,
that you could be doing placing sports betting. And stuff like that.
But Mike, again, like I'm sitting next to Tom.
I was excited. There was something in the air.
There was heavy breathing. He was sweating. He was shaking during sometimes watching other games on the Apple broadcast. It was a scene. It was a scene.
Here's the thing with Tom. He doesn't just make parlays. He makes like super mega duper parlays. Like he's going for the nuts. This guy. He's not holding anything back.
Yeah, but if they they make a lot of money. That's the thing.
True. But how many of them have you placed? At this point, you're probably just breaking even.
I actually just broke even probably this past weekend.
That makes sense.
My point exactly. But it was exciting.
But it was, and now he's got that rush, and it's going to be even worse.
He's just chasing it. He's just
great games this weekend. You got DC.
That responsibly. Please play responsibly.
Bet responsibly. Don't listen. If you want to be successful in sports betting, don't just place crazy parlays like Tom. Unless you want to have fun reasonably.
Actually, I don't know if there's great games this weekend. Not that many games on the Saturday slate. So you had Houston Dynamo beating LAFC over in Los Angeles, California on Wednesday night, 1-0. Little midweek MLS action, late night. But other than that, it seems like this weekend might not be the best Tommy Betts weekend. But regardless, stay tuned because something will probably pop up. All right.
Are you alluding to something with the color choice today about who you're going to pick on Saturday night? Because
no, but you know what? I just thought about that as I'm looking at their logo right now because I was like, oh, I'm wearing lavender. Ugh. It's kind of great for this week. It was a good, nice color. I thought
it is a nice color.
I don't wear many colors. I got more colors.
That's it. You got to brighten up the room a little bit more, Tom.
He hit a bet so he can get some new clothes.
The guy hits a big bet, and all of a sudden he comes in with new shirts. All right,
so things are starting to get back on track a little bit for your New England Revolution. You got a nice 3-1 win. Should have been probably a 3-0 win at home this past weekend versus Inter Miami. And now we're on to Orlando, who...
I just can't believe that that's a team like a little over a month ago that the Revolution lost to, because they, even in this iteration with the Revolution's injuries, they're a better team than Miami, and they lost 2-1 like a month ago.
The biggest difference, Gustavo Bo's back. And I feel like Gustavo Bo.
That was
Bobby
also
Wood
a big
tandem.
trap game. I felt like that
game.
first Miami game was a big trap game.
And that was the one where Noel Buck scored and they took it away.
Yeah.
It was a tough, but just watching, especially in the first half, you could just see the discrepancy right now between the two teams.
So Fortress Foxborough remains halfway through the season. The Revs remain undefeated at home in 2023 in league play. So we'll see what happens this weekend versus Orlando City. Haven't watched much of them, but you've been watching the last 12 games.
Yeah, we can do that. But I do want to start off the show just talking. He's been great all season, but the way Carlos Heel played on Saturday night was just next level.
You know what somebody said to me?
He was absolutely. Should have been included in like the players of the week, but he was the best player by far last week. He played. I can't stress enough how well he played.
Really well.
You know what people don't. Or somebody said to me, and it's kind of true, we forget to talk about Carlos's, just skill on the field and what he does week in and week out. I think because we've become so accustomed to it at this point.
I don't think we do. I've again, it's the flashy replays that you see, but to me, and Mike, I know you pick up on this too as well. It is all of this stuff. It's off the ball. It's what he does to create space for himself, to find someone visually. It's what he does to put players in position to score. It's almost there's maybe a handful of players at MLS right now that create opportunities like he does week in and week out. It's masterful. It was a masterclass on Saturday night.
Yeah, he played really well, and it's just one of those things that, like Tom said, you just become accustomed to. It's like you should still acknowledge the fact that the Revolution are so fortunate to have this man, controlling the midfield of their team. But at the same time, you also just like, that's just Carlos Hill being Carlos Hill. Like you just kind of expect it. And again, great performance and was a key factor of the victory they had against Inter Miami last weekend.
And that's why go ahead. But
that's what.
No, go please, because I have something to parlay off.
And you got another goal out of Bobby Wood this past weekend, which thank you very much, Bobby. Part of my parlay.
But yes,
a lot of parlay talk.
It's making this conversation become increasingly more difficult because Bobby Wood is scoring, and that's what you want from a forward at the end of the day. But for me, I still don't understand, and I still want to see Veroni, Bo, and Heel. We talked about how well Heel played, and again, Bobby Wood scored, so it's a tough conversation to have after the fact. But for me, if Veroni's in there for the full 90 with Heel playing the way that he played, I would have liked to see how he would have played in that spot.
I do too, but again, I think you say that makes the conversation more difficult. I think it makes it easier. You just keep riding with what's working. It ideally,
but you're hindering his progress.
You might be, but are you going to hinder the success of the team because of the progress of one player?
No, and that's why it's difficult.
Working.
It is because he's in there and he's scoring every week.
Exactly, and it's tough to change that. I wouldn't. You don't just make a change. If this was the preseason, or if the Revolution were struggling. I would say if the Revolution were really struggling and Bobby Wood was being still productive, I think you would see some more Vrioni in there by this point, even if Bobby Wood was scoring. But the Revs would have to be losing. If they're winning or if they're finding ways to get points, tough games, even games where they're kind of underperforming, and Bobby Wood is also contributing to that, I think you're less likely to see time from Vrioni. It's not his fault. I think there has been situations where we've seen Josie come on.
Well, that's why 3 weeks ago, Josie Altidore started over.
There's
him.
times where you can scratch your head at Bruce and some of the decisions that he's made.
Which, by the way, looks like Josie's out because the Athletics reporting that the Revs bought him out. So.
Right.
Which is also interesting because you look back to that, I believe, Toronto game and why was he starting and then 3 weeks later he's not on the team?
I think that's kind of like, looking back on it now, it's almost like Bruce doing his guy a favor. Like, hey, I'm going to give you one more chance of this type of thing. Like, let's see if you have anything left that you can provide to us.
Or it's a showcase for other teams. Like, hey, this guy's going to be available. He could still play.
It's possible, but I don't think Bruce thinks that way. I think he thinks more of
I would hope not, because the entire half you had nothing.
Bruce does like to bring in guys that he's familiar with, and he doesn't necessarily like just kicking them to the curb. I think he kind of gave them a chance, and this is why you continue to see Omar.
And I have to keep telling myself that it's still June, and I think Buxa was farther along right now because I do like to compare the two. I would like to see him in there more. That's just me.
I would too. I think, again, I think it would be
so much more beneficial for him. I think it would be so much more beneficial as you continue to trend towards August and September when you really need these players to step up. But your points are valid. Like, that's why if he was in there not scoring, then I would be way more.
If I recall correctly, I think Buxa also came on later on in the season, though, that 2020 year.
So maybe that's his methodology, his thought process.
Yeah, because when the Revolution started to get hot towards the end of that 2020 season, where they made that run to the Eastern Conference Finals, they counted a lot. Like, Buxa really came on strong in the later months of the season, because I remember, obviously, I wasn't allowed to forget it either on Twitter. I was very critical of Buxa and I was ready to see him go. He changed my mind. He stepped up and he performed, and he was a big reason why they were able to go on that playoff run in 2020. But I don't think Vrioni's had the chance, and it's for different reasons. It's not because he's not necessarily completely a bust. I think it's just more of that the rest of the guys around him have stepped up and they're keeping this team afloat during some tough times.
I think it's unfair to say what you didn't, but
No,
I
he's definitely
see
not a
that
bust.
too.
Not calling him
it's
a
so
bust.
unfair to say that because when you and I know people don't like this on Twitter. The guy to my left, your right, doesn't like it either. But when he's on there, you see it. He has he had. You can see why the Revolution brought
he'll
him
find
over
it.
from Juventus. I do, but you need the minutes for that. And as we continue on in the season, if those minutes aren't there, I think it's doing the player a disservice.
I
Just
don't know
my
if it'll
opinion.
happen this weekend, but I thought that this tweet from Andy from Revs Nation, which I encourage everybody to go follow his blog, Revs Nation, BostonSportsNation.com. Andy from Revs Nation tweeted out, okay, but what does it say about Vrioni, who consistently sat on the bench while Altidore got subbed or started ahead of him? So just something to think about.
I think it has more to do with Bruce, not Vrioni. I think that's a Bruce thing because, like I said, Bruce,
From what I heard, you'd
Bruce
be right. Yeah.
has continuously brought his guys in, guys that he's trusted, guys that he's dealt with in the past, veterans. He loves his vets. I think at the end of the day, are you going to trust this kid that you haven't really seen on the field much, or are you going to throw in Josie Altidore? Do we agree with it? Obviously not. But in Bruce's mind, it has less to do with what Vrioni can offer him and more to do with who Bruce trusts at this point in time. Because at the end of the day, even if he trusts Josie Altidore and Vrioni equally, he's going to go with the guy he trusts more.
I would hope that wasn't the case.
That's unfortunately what we're watching.
I know.
That's just,
It just something's missing. It just doesn't make sense to me because again, your eyeballs show you that there's something there. It's not being there hasn't been an opportunity for it to be showcased yet.
and I think there will be a time, and I feel like it'll be later in the season.
I was talking to Frank Delapa about this at halftime, and he made a great point from the Boston Globe. They're not going to bring him over from Juventus, and Juventus isn't going to give him the opportunity that he had before he came over here if there isn't talent there. That's not how it works overseas. It might work like that here, but he's not going to get.
Or maybe that's why they were okay to let him go. Well, there's something to be said on both sides. Regardless, we're not giving up on Vrioni yet. The frustrations about him, I think, honestly.
You have, Tom. You did before the season starts and you saw him play.
Yeah. I think at this point, it's sort of an afterthought. I'm not really thinking about Vrioni right now. There's too much going on. There's too many things to be excited about. Revolution are coming off of a big win against a not good team, but still, they're continuing to find points. They're still finding themselves towards the top half of the Eastern Conference. So I think that things are going to be okay. But it's a long season, and I think the July transfer window is going to be a very big time for this Revolution team.
This move has to be made, and you know more than we do, that it has to be made to bring someone in, right?
I can't see. It clears up
Bruce
a lot
knows
of
it
cap
too, and I don't
space.
think
because here's the thing, that I think people forget about with this move too. The Revs ate up more of the Josie salary this year than they did last year. It's split between the Revs and Toronto for this year, but the Revs.
But if they remove that,
now
they're completely rid of that from the salary cap.
Right.
He doesn't affect the cap at all.
Right.
And I don't think
It's
Bruce
better to cut bait.
would have left that open-ended answer, right, when the question was asked if they were looking to make any moves this transfer window. He didn't usually, if this was something he wasn't thinking about at all,
he said
he
it
would
to
shut
me.
it down. Exactly. So he said that this is more than likely what they're going to be doing is looking into making a move. I wouldn't expect
They won't be done after this. There's multiple moves being made this summer.
the pressure is on. As much as he likes to downplay it, there is a pressure to succeed with this team now.
Yeah.
As excited as he is about the young talent and how as well as they've performed, you still have a veteran group. Carlos Hill, you got hopefully a bunch of years left. But Gustavo Bo, some of these other guys, Farrell, guys that have been here a long time, Petrovic could be gone after this year. You got to win with this team now.
Yeah, I mean, we're already seeing the rumors about Noel Buck and Petrovic from Tom Bogert, a friend of the show, talking about really what's probably going to be coming next for those guys. I think he's over at the Athletic now, too. Yeah, he's over at the Athletic now.
Is.
So it seems like those two will be out the door at the end of the season, which at least the Revs will be able to keep them throughout the rest of the year. So
you talked about you and Bruce having.
I haven't talked about me and Bruce yet.
No, but you intimated before that when Mike said he told this to me. So I want to ask you about two parts of the press conference, and we're going to play one of them. One is about Vrioni. Did you find that interesting that Bruce just brought that up out of nowhere? Like, you guys going to ask me about Vrioni this week again?
No, he just knows Sam asks the question almost every week, which I I'm worn out even trying to figure out what's going on with Vrioni at this point with him. Like, just when we see him, we see him. When we don't, you're going to have to deal with me then. But for now,
Oh no!
just,
Oh no.
Whatever.
Maybe we won't.
Hurricane Tom.
Maybe we won't come in that week, Mike. I don't know.
That's a Zoom show.
So they had a good win. He was feeling in a good mood. I told you there was something in the air the other night in Foxborough.
He looked a little loose, huh?
He was a little loosey-goosey.
Like, I don't know.
Because you're back home, you're winning. You're back on the road all month. May sucked.
He was like leaning forward.
Maybe it was. Did you like bowl against him? Did you guys have like a?
No.
So I'll tell you a funny story, and I have no shame in saying this. I actually went up to go say hi to him.
Oh,
at
yeah.
the Splitsville.
I didn't think we were going to bring this up.
Oh, well, just to prove that I'm not in with the Arena family. So I would go up to say hello. I say hello to everybody. Great night. Blah blah blah.
Mayor Tom.
Go up. And
Everybody, listen. Everybody knows Tom. I thought I was with the mayor of the Revolution. Everything.
Picture place. I go up to say hi to Bruce. It's the end of the night. Hey, coach, good to see you. Appreciate. Walked right by me.
Yeah.
No, the thing is, let me give Tom. No, Tom. I'm going to defend you here for a second. I know you're a humble
I actually
man.
almost find it funnier that he walked by me.
It was a really weird time because where you were trying to have a conversation with him, it was like a hallway out.
And he was like,
So you could have easily just been a person walking by.
Right.
There's no way. And there was a person in between you. And right before that, he stopped to talk to somebody else.
he was talking to Bolello.
Right. So exactly. Bolello was having a conversation with him. It was a very awkward. It would have been, honestly, it actually would have been more awkward to stop him in that moment. So we kind of got lucky there.
Well,
And I was just an innocent bystander in this all. I was like, listen, I'm going to let Tom do his
blew
thing.
right by me. Like
I
it
do
didn't
want to
exist.
say though that visual because I wasn't there. You just hate to see it.
And even worse, it was by like the sticky buns. It was like right next to like the
All the cinnamon
all
buns.
the finger foods. And I was
What's
like,
up with this show and dessert? We got
Just
you.
keep me away.
We got you with the brownies. We got you with the cinnamon buns.
Never forget the brownie,
Oh,
man.
So-
that is a top 3 story that no one's ever heard. That no one ever will. But that
Maybe
brownie.
if they're lucky.
No, that brownie story is amazing.
Had a real rebuttal for the question itself. Is it fair that MLS is working so closely with Miami after slapping them on the wrist for roster, salary, whatever?
I thought it was a fair question. Like the thing is like,
I don't know. The internet thinks that he doesn't know what he's talking
No,
about.
I know, but
But
you know,
nobody had a good defense for why I was wrong.
Listen. We've gone over roster things on the show, just a mind-numbing amount of times. Okay, and I still don't understand it, but whatever. But when there's a valid question to be asked, especially in a week where the biggest news in the league's history happened, I think it's fair to kind of bring it up. And it's not even that you're mad about it, right?
No, because
I think it's just-
he gave you a great answer because I saw a lot of people saying, "Oh, well, he didn't say anything." No, he said everything. And the best way to sum it up, the ends justify the means.
Of course, and it also the fact that he went through the history of the league and the fact that how many times the rules have changed. He mentioned, that Messi coming in is the biggest thing that can happen to this league. All of the owners, none of them are necessarily thinking about being slapped on the wrist if they were to pull the same move for a lesser known player. But everybody is happy that somebody landed Lionel Messi, and it doesn't matter where it was. It's not it's Miami, it's a major market, it's Beckham, it's Lionel Messi. You do whatever you can to bring him to your
it's
league.
not even necessarily hating on Miami as much as it is if we're just going to play this way now, where 1 year you could be slapped on the wrist for really trying to be aggressive and build the best team possible, and the next year we're going to work with you to bring in the best player of all time. All right, then open that up for everybody. And that's what Bruce said. Hey, we could have put that offer together if we had an open DP slot open, but it's also the same guy that said to me, well, Miami could have had 3 designated players and still brought in Messi. I wouldn't have cared. So then why do we need 3 DPs?
Well, this is where you have to look into, okay, why be mad about what the rules are currently and who can do what and who is allowed to do this and bring in this player, and think about, okay, now how can this change the league again? I mean, if we've learned anything in the sports world this past 2 weeks, it's that anything can happen. Look at what happened with the LIV and the PGA, okay? The Saudi
nowhere.
Yeah, out of nowhere. And guess what? Whether people like it or not, Moynihan maybe lost a lot of pretty much the majority of the respect from a lot of the people in his organization. But at the end of the day, he's making them a lot more money. okay? And he's and whatever changes that are going to be made 5 years from now, they're probably going to be like, okay, maybe I turned down 200 million or whatever it was to go play in the live at that time, but I'm now making more money. The rules have changed to better this, the PGA and whatever it may be. We could be talking about the same thing with MLS. Why be mad about what happened 3 years ago when you attempted something similar to now it's like, wait, hold on a second. Messi can actually play in the MLS. Maybe we should restructure things.
Yeah, exactly. There absolutely should be a restructuring. And the other thing too is that if I'm Bruce Arena, well, if I'm going to try to go lure, let's just say for the sake of the argument, it's not going to happen, but for the sake of the argument, you want to lure Kylian Mbappe here, you want to lure Cristiano Ronaldo here. Can you get that same Apple deal and Adidas deal that Miami just got? Like that creates an unfair balance that I think is going to be a derelict effect of this. You don't think that when New York City FC opens up their stadium in 2026, 2027, that they're going to not have the same type of full court press to bring in that level of star to be playing in Queens? You're out of your damn mind.
Well, you bring up Ronaldo. What if you're in Kansas City right now?
Oh, man.
And you're seeing what just happened. Why wasn't that, or was that a part of trying to bring Ronaldo over?
I don't think it
here?
was, but there's also...
Well, it's Miami. That's the thing. Messi wants to be in Miami.
There's also different factors. I mean, Kansas City did bring the full court press for Ronaldo, which is still just like the weirdest thing.
Ronaldo want to live in Kansas City.
That, and also Saudi offered him just a crazy amount of money, and everybody's different. Messi was thinking more about, he has a home in Miami. How can you make it financially beneficial?
This is not about Messi. It's about MLS.
Exactly. But the MLS, you can't be mad at that decision that they were made. And who's to say that they don't have the same option for other players in the future, for other franchises?
Maybe this is the blueprint.
Maybe
now.
This is the beginning.
But is it for those franchises like in New England, like a Philadelphia, like a DC, like a Nashville?
Bruce Arena said it himself. He said, listen, if we wanted to go try to do that, we could do that. The fact that there's things that work against Revolution because they play on turf.
He said he'd trade for Messi, too.
But here's the thing. What is your owner doing? What is your owner? And this is I never really come at the Crafts because I think they've done a really good job here during the Bruce era. But what are you doing to compete with that type of move? That's a fair question to ask. How are you going to compete with a team that's going to be able to use Apple and Adidas to lure in a Lionel Messi?
You don't.
You don't.
The answer is they don't. The majority. How many teams in the league? 28.
28 going to be 29.
So 27 other teams or maybe 25 other teams can't do that. And it's not because of the market. It's because the Revolution play in a football stadium that has turf, artificial turf. There's things that they have to work on, and they don't have currently an available DP slot. Maybe it's something that, and we know that Bruce has been very vocal about the fact that he does not care about bringing talent over from Europe. He's been very adamant on building his team up with the young guys. He was very passionate about the younger guys coming up and building around the team that he has here. He's not necessarily going to go find a big fish in Europe just to go find a big fish in Europe. So that you have to remove. It's not even a... I'm trying to compare it to like baseball back in the 2000s. George Steinbrenner opened up the bank, the checkbook for anybody he wanted. He went and got the biggest names. That was the way he functioned. And the Red Sox had to follow because that's what they wanted to do. Not every team is going to want to do that. That's not look at the Rays. The Rays in baseball is another team. They like to play money ball. Everybody has different strategies, so you can't say, well, it's not fair to this team. They might not want to do that anyways.
All right. Well, listen, I think it's just the beginning of the conversation. I think some of it might not make sense to people now, but when Busquets comes here on a TAM deal, when Jordi Alba...
But who's... I truly, I really want to know it, and it's a fair conversation. From my perspective, this could be great in the long run. Like I think that
absolutely,
if the way things currently stand, roster wise, you are correct. Could be frustrating for other teams, but I think it's only going to benefit the league. Even if you bring in all these other guys and whatever, that's going to open up doors for every team in the league.
All right, Steve Cangialosi, MLS Season Pass, coming up next year on New England Soccer Weekly. New England Soccer Weekly rolls along on this very busy Saturday. Very busy week for the show, boys. Very busy week. Very excited for this guest coming up right here. I grew up watching our next guest. He's now with MLS Season Pass, but forever in my life, he was with the MSG Network.
This is by far pre-interview the most excited that you've been.
Yeah.
Because I've never gotten a chance to actually meet Steve Cangialosi, and I actually get a chance to finally talk to Steve Cangialosi, who joins us on New England Soccer Weekly this week. Steve, welcome to Providence. How are you?
Tom, the check didn't even clear yet, and
Yeah,
I
I
get
know.
that kind of introduction. That's wonderful.
Well, here's the thing. So Steve's been on my TV since I was a kid, and first off, I mean, part of the misery that I grew up with him being a New York sports fan, he worked for the MSG network, but he did the Devil's side. You know, first off, he was Devil's studio host, and then play-by-play once Doc Emmerich went on and did national stuff. And I've never got a chance. Like I've met a lot of New York broadcasters, but I've never gotten a chance, or New York, New Jersey broadcasters, but I never got a chance to meet Steve Cangialosi. So to have him on the show this week, especially with everything that happened with Bruce Arena last week, very cool. You're very familiar with Bruce Arena. He spent some time down there with the New York Red Bulls. So have you kept in touch with him at all? Did you ever get a relationship with him when he was down there with the Metro Stars?
So Bruce came to the New York Red Bulls. They were already the Red Bulls by the time they came, and he was there shortly after the 2006 World Cup, which was a bad World Cup for the United States. After all the excitement in 2002, getting to the quarterfinals, you might remember that second cycle with Bruce. They never got out of the group. It was largely disappointing, and everybody knew it was time for a change. And usually when a head coach of a national team goes that second cycle, many times it doesn't go as well as it does. But yes, Bruce and I have always spoken at least 2 or 3 times a year, almost always in advance of when New York would play New England or New York would play any team that Bruce Arena happened to be coaching. Obviously, the great success with the LA Galaxy. You get straightforward, honest, blunt answers when you speak to that coach from Long Island, and I anticipate getting those in about an hour from now when I have a call scheduled with him in advance of Saturday night's game.
So he hasn't changed at all in the time that you've known him?
No. I can say that the person I covered in 2006, 2007 largely mirrors the man who's coaching the New England Revolution today, probably packing a few more pounds and with a few more wrinkles, but I still think going strong and a proper coach for that side at the age of 71. And I had reservations when the New England Revolution hired Bruce. I thought that the people who were looking at his resume were missing the point. People talked about his success with the U.S. men's national team, his success with the LA Galaxy. I thought that the proper analogy should be to his time with New York. And I say that because the parallels of the job in New England and the parallels of the job with the Red Bulls were largely the same. Think about it. He goes to a market where he's coaching an MLS original team, one that's never won a championship, one that plays in a cold weather city, one that plays in an NFL stadium on AstroTurf, as the Revolution do now, as the Red Bulls did back then before the move to Red Bull Arena, and also playing for a team that traditionally has not been the big spender. So I looked at that and I thought that was the perfect analogy. But I've got to tell you, when they won Supporter Shield and I thought the schedule wasn't fair to them in 2021, I had to eat crow. And he showed me he's the right coach for this team, and I suspect he will be for a time moving forward. I think he's going to be able to call the shot on when he leaves MLS and when he leaves New England specifically.
Yeah, I kind of felt like after that 2021 loss to New York City FC, when I asked him after that game if he was going to retire, he kind of left it open-ended. And I think his son, Kenny Arena, talked him back into coaching another season. And then after, obviously, the failure of last year, now he's definitely not going out like that. So I totally agree with you. It's MLS Cup or bust for Bruce Arena at this point with this New England Revolution side.
Well, Steve, I
but
know
you
this
understand.
Is your...
You do understand what I was talking about, where I thought it was unfair what happened in 2021. There was the 23-day gap between their last regular season game and the first playoff game. That's all I was alluding to.
Yeah, which they got screwed. I mean, and that. By the way, Bruce, like, has never been wrong about schedule making with MLS. Like from when we've heard about him, like he hated that back then. He talked to me a couple weeks ago about how the international window, because the Revs, I'm pretty sure that, they'll be missing some bodies this weekend with the international breaks going on and everything. Like MLS has never really been kind in general with its schedule making, which I never understood. But hey, such is life, right?
Well, he puts that into the press conferences every now and then.
Every now and then he likes to remind you that the schedule is terrible.
Well, Steve, this is your first time covering the Revolution, your first game on the call. Carlos Gil, he's played great all week.
He's been unbelievable.
All year, yes. But last week he just played masterful. So for you, how excited are you to call this game this weekend and see a player like Gil right up front?
I've always loved watching and calling his games because I think he's kind of the ultimate MLS freelancer. There are only a handful of players in the league that I think fall into this category. They could be anywhere on the field at any given time. And I think Arena and the coaching staff in New England gives him that latitude. We're still only, more than 48 hours out from the game. So I'm in the initial stages of my research for Saturday night, but I've been crunching a lot of numbers since yesterday. And I came up with this for Carlos Gil, that among players in the history of this league with at least 50 assists, there are only two guys in the history of this league with more assists per 90. One of them is Carlos Valderrama. The other is Marco Echeverri, who Bruce had in the early stages of MLS back when he was head coach of DC United. So he's crafting something numerically that I think is extremely impressive. And I had doubts when he came back from the serious injury that he would be the force that he was prior to that, but he's come back in many ways even better. And he is the focal point of just about everything I think the Revolution do. This is a good team. I think this is a top 3 team in MLS. And once you get a top 3 team in MLS Eastern Conference, I should clarify. And once you get to the postseason, things could line up very well for them. And Gil is at the forefront of almost everything that they do.
Where do you think they are in the league? It's very interesting you say they're only top 3 in the Eastern Conference, because it feels like once they get to full strength health-wise, they were a Supporters Shield leading for a time without even some of their best players. Gustavo Bo was out
very early on.
It was very early on, but they still, Bruce made a point to mention that, it's remarkable with all the injuries that they have, 17 games through the season, that they're sitting in the position that they are. And part of that time, they were sitting in first place. So once they get healthy, where do they sit in the league, do you think?
It's funny. Pat Noonan, the coach of Cincinnati, had a remark the other day. These power rankings in MLS are meaningless. I'm one of the guys who gets to vote on those power rankings every week. And I will say this. I've had New England over the last 4 to 5 cycles of the vote, I think either 4th or 5th in the league. So what does that tell you? I had them 3rd in the East. That tells you that you're talking to a guy who believes that maybe 4 of the 5 best teams in MLS fall in the category of the Eastern Conference. I still don't think we've seen the best of Philadelphia. I think their schedule has played largely into the difficult patch they had earlier this season. They largely have come out of that despite the most recent loss to San Jose. But to answer your question, they are right there, I think, with the top 5 teams in MLS as a whole. And so much of this is who's healthy at the right time. Where are you momentum-wise going into the playoffs? And those are things that we can't really predict by the time decision day rolls around. And let's face it, we live in a country and we all cover a league where you are judged by what you do once the postseason begins. Very few people are going to be able to look at what teams like the Revolution did in 2021 and say, that's my standout moment. And I speak from experience because you're talking to a guy who's covered a New York team that won 3 Supporters Shields in a span of 6 years. That is a blip on the radar of MLS history and nothing more than that.
It's so disappointing because when you think of what the Red Bulls should be for this league and what they're not, it drives you insane. And especially the season that I spent down there covering this team, they had the formula, and for some reason, when you had Ollie Curtis there and you had Jesse Marsh, it all blew up. It's still one of the most baffling downfalls I think I've ever seen in this league, period. But just to that point about the power rankings, how amazing is it, because you've been in this league for a long time, to see the Eastern Conference go from, being so far behind the West when, we talk about top teams in this league, Seattle, Real Salt Lake for years, Sporting Kansas City for years, obviously the Galaxy, the Dynamo, FC Dallas. And most of those teams can't even hang with the East now. What does it say about the parity shift in the league?
It says 3 letters, MLS. Nobody knows where we're going at any particular time. The power shift in the East, I think, has been taken to another level this year, largely because of Cincinnati. Not that far removed from 3 wooden spoons, and now the class of MLS until somebody proves otherwise. See, I don't like delving too far into these conversations because and I know that there are teams like LAFC and Seattle and maybe even St. Louis once Klaus gets back healthy that can render a conversation like this utterly meaningless at the most important time. But we've gotten to that point where I truly believe it's harder to navigate the schedule in the Eastern Conference right now than it is in the West. And a lot of the glorious moments, as you said, in, I would say, the last 15 years have shifted to the Western Conference. But that's largely because of coaches and ownerships that have been worth it. Now, Garth Lagerwey is no longer with Seattle. He was the architect of something very special, and I know he's very much trying to duplicate that in the Eastern Conference, and there's an owner in Atlanta, and Arthur Blank, who's probably going to give him the resources to get that. But when I think just in terms of where are the teams in MLS right now, I absolutely have Cincinnati. I absolutely have Nashville, which has moved back to the East. I absolutely have Philadelphia, and I have New England in my top 4, 5, or 6, depending on the given day and what side of the bed I wake up on in the morning.
Yeah, and that's the way that we kind of all anticipated, or what we anticipated going into last year. That kind of fell flat. Some of the signings that Bruce had last year did not pan out, including one that was actually bought out this week, which is Josie Altidore. Heading into the July transfer window, how important do you think it is for the Revolution season and Bruce Arena and kind of his legacy here in New England to make an impact in this transfer window coming up in July for the second half of the season?
Hey, Mike, is that official yet with Altidore, by the way? I know The Athletic reported it. It's done, guys?
I don't know if it's like a pen to paper, but it's been reported.
It seems like it's moving. The Athletic reported it. It doesn't see. We haven't gotten an official email from the Revs this morning. We're recording on Thursday morning here at 10:30, so nothing's official yet. But it seems like it's moving in that direction, and it seems like Saturday you won't see Josie on the sideline.
So what does this mean? It means they exercised the buyout of a player who's now 33. And I kind of get this. And I guess the only element to this that takes me by surprise at all is that I know Bruce is a coach who has typically placed his trust in experienced players and players that he has a history with. And obviously, he has a history with people like Josie Altidore and others on the team. You don't need me to bore you with what he's gone through. But I think you look at what the Revolution are now, and if you do have a healthy Gustavo Bou, and Bobby Wood is going to give you a season with double-digit goals that I'm not sure a lot of people had him pegged for this year, and I still think there's some hope that Vrioni is going to have an impact that we haven't really seen with our own eyes yet. Well, the handwriting was on the wall that Josie's time and contribution would be only minimal moving forward. So in that sense, yeah, it makes sense. What this means, as I understand it, when you exercise the one-time buyout, that means he comes off the cap completely. Now, he can be a bargain basement signing for another team, but it does open the door, as Mike said, for a potential signing this summer. So to take it back to what I was saying just a few minutes ago, what's going to enable a team like New England to leapfrog Cincinnati or to leapfrog in a quest for an MLS Cup a team like LAFC? It's a signing that they would make this summer. Does that have to be of the absolute offensive variety? No, but I think it has to be an impact player to really go into a postseason and say, yeah, I think New England's going to be one of the hardest outs in MLS. I'll be watching with great interest this summer. You make a good point. but I think we can say that probably about 6 or 7 teams in the league who probably think they're one player away from going for it all.
Well, it seems like if the Revs are going to go out there and get a big splash signing, this is the time to do it. MLS, in my opinion, this is Tom Quinlan speaking, not Nick Giuliano,
Okay.
not Mike DeSilva,
Thank you.
not Steve Cangialosi of MLS Season
Thank you
Pass.
for the
who you can
clarification.
watch the Revs and Orlando City this weekend on 7:30 on Apple TV. This is Tom Quinlan speaking. It seems like this is a time where MLS is willing to bend the rules a little bit when it comes to roster rules. Last year, Gareth Bale comes in on a TAM deal. In no other time in this league's history would have Gareth
It's
Bale.
like Groundhog's Day. We've been going through this for 3 months
Yeah,
with Tom.
replay
It's just
the
we keep
replay.
hearing the same thing.
Replay the replay.
It seems like if the Revs want to go get that big European name and have them fall under TAM or GAM, whatever designation they want to put it under where it's not a designated player, this is the time to do it. And they seem like they have the cap space to do it now.
Yeah, so put yourself in the position of all the sporting directors and general managers in MLS right now. You want hard answers to the questions that you're raising, and you want them now, because when the window opens on July 5th, you're not starting your work on July 5th. All the dirty work is done now in the lead up to that transfer window. Yeah, you're not going to start preparing for the big ticket signing on August 1st. You're doing that now. I get your point. I think those are conversations that are being had seriously in the pockets of MLS offices that you and I are not privy to. I think it's more realistic to say we're going to enter that brave new world in 2024 or shortly after that. There's too much jockeying of rules right now mid-season that would have to take place. Now, I cannot tell you firmly how important it is for the league if Messi says, I want Di Maria and I want Busquets, and the league needs to find a mechanism in order to make that happen, then all bets are off. And then you're going to the MLS Board of Governors, you're going to all the sporting directors and the team, and you're saying, this is what we do to make this happen right now. You know, we've seen so many things change on the fly in the 28-year nutsy history of this league that all of this would fall right into that same category if something drastic were to happen in midseason. I just think it's more realistic for next year.
Yeah, and another name that floating out I just saw recently the last couple of days was Jordi Alba, another former teammate of Messi in Barcelona, is another name that's floating out there to join him in Miami. So
I mean, you know and I know that Messi is walking into a team that's last place right now in Miami. That's not the team that he's going to walk back into 2024 with. That thing is going to be loaded.
No. It's going to have a much different look. And I think there will be this element of the other 28 teams in the league saying, we want to keep up with the Joneses. How do we enable that? Right. And I do think that there will be changes to the salary structure in the league. Most people I've spoken to say it's time to just get rid of it all. General allocation money, target allocation money. I do think what's important more than a salary cap is a salary floor. I don't want to see some of the teams that are an important part of the history of this league. Real Salt Lake comes to mind. We shouldn't be worried about Colorado because Kroenke has money, but they are where they are right now, and the big ticket item seems to elude them in recent years. I want to see Columbus, which has a great, proud history from day one in this league, be able to compete. The salary floor to me is extremely important because I don't want to see any teams in this league kind of ride a financial coattail of what's going on thousands of miles away. Competitive balance to me is still very important, regardless of whether or not the greatest player living right now is part of this league or not.
And there's been so many arguments made about it. We mentioned earlier in this interview was the parity of the league. We mentioned how much the shift has, happened in the league from not only just the growth, but the shift from the West Coast power balance over to the Eastern Conference. And there is the fear. You mentioned that a lot of people are saying that they want to get rid of the cap completely, but then there's also the people that are arguing the balance of the league and the parity of the league, and not even just the financial aspect of it, but just overall, success in winning championships in MLS.
Yeah, and I think there are some people in the league that look back at the fall of NASL and say we can't go down and repeat that part of the game's history in this country. I don't like that comparison personally, because we are so much more ready now as a soccer nation for the arrival of Lionel Messi than the United States was in the 1970s when Pelé came to New York. I think, the structure of this league and what has happened since David Beckham set foot as an MLS player on American soil back in 2007 is nothing short of remarkable. Beckham walked into a 13-team league. We're about to hit 30, and probably we're not stopping there.
It's wild. Steve Cangialosi, MLS season pass. I know we didn't get to talk about Orlando, but there's so much happening in the world of Major League Soccer right now. I think everything comes secondary to it, and it's great. And the momentum is on MLS's side for sure. Steve Cangialosi with MLS season pass on the call for this weekend between the New England Revolution and Orlando City SC, 7:30 on MLS season pass. Sign up today for that. Steve, it was a real honor to finally have you on the show. Thank you so much. Very cool to talk to you.
Great, guys. And if you're in the area, stop by the booth Saturday. I would love to meet you. Take care, guys.
Steve,
100%.
Steve, I know you're a busy guy, but I would like to have you come on this show once a month. I've never, again, this is the most positive, happy, giddy Tom has maybe ever been since we've done this show with him.
I would agree with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm a Rangers fan, but I get to talk to Steve Cangialosi today.
Love
It's great. It's home.
You want to know what's interesting? I left the Devils booth at the end of the season a year and a half ago.
Right.
And they wound up winning 16 consecutive games a month and a half after I left. So I joked with Tom Fitzgerald, the GM, pretty easy to figure out which piston wasn't firing, right?
So you were there for the Brodeur years. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had your fair share of winning, okay? The other side of New York was hammered for years. All right, Steve Cangialosi, thank you so much, sir. We'll talk to you soon. You're the best.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Steve.
Great. Thank you.